I never expected my life to change so drastically in just one night. It all started as a joke, really, a silly dare among friends during a late-night gathering. We were laughing, drinking, and someone brought up the idea of trying on each other's clothes just for fun. I was always the one who played along, the guy who didn't take himself too seriously, so when my best friend, Jake, tossed me one of his girlfriend's dresses and said, "Go on, put it on," I just shrugged and did it. The fabric felt strange against my skin, soft, delicate, so unlike anything I'd ever worn before. The others hooted and clapped as I twirled, exaggerating my movements for comedic effect. I even grabbed a wig from the costume box and draped it over my short hair, striking ridiculous poses while they snapped pictures. We laughed until our sides hurt, and eventually I peeled off the dress, tossed it back, and forgot about it. But that night, as I lay in bed, something felt off. My body didn't feel right. My skin prickled, my muscles ached, and my thoughts were hazy, like I was drifting in and out of a dream. I chalked it up to the alcohol and passed out. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my curtains and the weight of long hair spilling over my shoulders. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. I lifted a hand, a small, delicate hand with slender fingers, and touched my face. My cheeks were softer, my jawline smoother. My heart pounded as I threw off the covers and stumbled to the mirror. The reflection staring back at me wasn't mine. It was a woman's face. Wide eyes, full lips, a slender neck leading down to curves that definitely hadn't been there the night before. My breath came in short gasps as I yanked up my shirt, only to find smooth skin, a flat but unmistakably feminine chest, and hips that flared in a way that made my stomach drop. I pinched myself. Hard. Nothing changed. Panic set in. I scrambled for my phone, my smaller hands fumbling with the screen, and dialed Jake. When he answered, I blurted out something incoherent about waking up as a girl, expecting him to laugh or call me crazy. Instead, he just sighed and said, "Dude, what the hell did you do last night?" Turns out, Jake's girlfriend, Lena, was into witchcraft. Not the Hollywood kind with cauldrons and broomsticks, but the real, quiet, intention-based stuff. And that dress I'd worn? It wasn't just any dress. It was something she'd enchanted, a garment meant to reveal inner truth, or some other vague, mystical nonsense. She'd never expected it to actually work, let alone turn me into a woman overnight. Lena was horrified when she found out. She rushed over, flipping through old books and muttering about reversals, but nothing seemed to stick. Days passed, then weeks. I had to adjust, buying new clothes, learning how to move in this body, dealing with the stares and the way people treated me differently. It was exhausting, but strangely liberating. I'd always been curious about crossdressing, about the idea of being feminine, but I'd never allowed myself to explore it. Now, I had no choice. And the more time passed, the more I realized I didn't hate it. In fact, parts of it felt right. Then came the nausea. At first, I thought it was food poisoning. Then stress. Then, when the dizziness and fatigue didn't fade, I finally caved and went to a doctor. The pregnancy test came back positive. I nearly fainted.
How?
I couldn't have, but the doctor just smiled and said, "Congratulations." Turns out, magic doesn't care about biology. The universe, or whatever force had transformed me, had decided I was a woman in every sense, including the ability to carry life. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Jake was speechless. Lena looked equal parts guilty and fascinated. And me? I was terrified. But beneath the fear, there was something else, a quiet, growing warmth. 9 months later, I held my daughter for the first time. And in that moment, despite the absurdity of it all, I knew I wouldn't change a thing. The first few weeks of motherhood were a blur of sleepless nights, frantic Google searches, and an endless cycle of diapers and feedings. My body had changed again, softer, fuller, adapting in ways I hadn't even known were possible. The magic, or whatever it was, had reshaped me completely, and now here I was, sitting in a rocking chair at 3 a.m. with a tiny human in my arms, wondering how my life had spiraled into this surreal reality. I named her Lily. Jake and Lena helped as much as they could, but there was only so much they could do. This was my life now, my responsibility. And as terrifying as that was, it was also beautiful. The way her tiny fingers curled around mine, the soft sounds she made when she slept, the way her eyes, still that hazy newborn blue, seemed to stare right into my soul. I had never loved anything so fiercely in my life. But reality wasn't all soft moments and quiet joy. There were complications. Paperwork, for one. How do you explain a sudden gender change and an unplanned pregnancy to the government? I had no medical history as a woman, no records of prenatal care. I had to rely on Lena's connections, a midwife who didn't ask too many questions, a friend of a friend who knew how to forge documents. It was messy, illegal, and stressful, but it was the only way. Then there were the stares, the whispers. People who had known me before, neighbors, co-workers, didn't recognize me. And the ones who did recognize me had questions I couldn't answer. Some assumed I was a long-lost sister. Others thought I was a completely different person. I stopped going to my old haunts, changed my routines, and eventually moved to a different part of town.
It was easier that way.
The hardest part, though, wasn't the logistics or the secrecy. It was the loneliness. I missed my old body sometimes, the simplicity of it, the familiarity. I missed being able to blend in, to walk through the world without second glances. But more than anything, I missed touching someone. Not just holding Lily, but being held, being wanted. I hadn't been with anyone since the change, and the idea of dating, of explaining my situation to a potential partner, felt impossible. Then I met Daniel. He was a barista at the cafe near my new apartment. Sweet, awkward, with a habit of burning his fingers on the espresso machine. He didn't know me from before. To him, I was just another woman who ordered too many lattes. And one rainy afternoon, when Lily was fussing in her stroller and I was on the verge of tears from exhaustion, he didn't just hand me my coffee. He came around the counter, took the stroller and rocked her gently until she settled. "You're a natural," I said, surprised. He shrugged, cheeks pink. "Youngest of 5. You learn fast." After that, we started talking. Small things at first, the weather, his classes, he was studying graphic design, my job, freelance writing, which I could do at home. Then deeper things, his fear of never being good enough, my fear of being found out. I didn't tell him the truth, not yet, but I wanted to. And then one night, he kissed me. It was soft, hesitant, like he wasn't sure he was allowed. And for a moment, I froze, because how could I let this go further without telling him? But then Lily let out a little cry from her crib, and Daniel pulled back, smiling. "You're amazing," he murmured. "Both of you." And just like that, I knew I had to trust him. The truth came tumbling out one evening over cheap takeout. I told him everything, the dress, the magic, the pregnancy, the fear. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he reached over and took my hand. "I don't care," he said.
And he meant it.
It wasn't perfect. There were adjustments, doubts, moments where we both wondered if this was too much. But we made it work. Because in the end, it wasn't about how I got here. It was about where I was going. And for the first time since I woke up in this body, I was excited to find out. Life with Daniel was nothing like I expected. He didn't just accept me. He adored me in a way that made my chest ache. The way he'd kiss my forehead when I was stressed, how he'd rock Lily to sleep humming off-key lullabies, the quiet pride in his eyes when he introduced me as his girlfriend. It was more than I ever thought I'd have. But magic, as I was learning, had a funny way of twisting things when you least expected it. It started with small things. A flicker of déjà vu when I touched certain fabrics. Strange dreams where I heard whispers in a language I didn't know. Then one evening while folding laundry, I found the dress, the one that had started it all. I'd thrown it in the back of my closet, too afraid to get rid of it, too afraid to touch it again. But now, as my fingers brushed against the silky fabric, a jolt ran through me. The room spun. Suddenly, I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was standing in a dimly lit space, a shop, maybe, lined with jars and dried herbs. A woman with Lena's eyes, but older, sharper, stared at me from behind a counter. "So," she said, voice like smoke, "you're the one who wore my creation." I tried to speak, but no sound came out. "The dress wasn't meant for you," she continued, circling me. "It was meant to reveal truth, not rewrite it. But you had a truth buried so deep even you didn't know it." She tilted her head. "Do you like what you've become?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I? I thought of Lily's laugh, Daniel's hands in my hair, the quiet joy of looking in the mirror and finally recognizing myself.
Yes.
The woman smiled.
Good.
Then the magic has done its job. Just like that, I was back in my apartment, the dress crumpled in my hands. But something was different. My skin tingled, my vision sharper, like a veil had been lifted. And when I looked down, the dress was fading, thread by thread, dissolving into nothing. By morning, it was gone. I told Daniel everything. He listened, wide-eyed, then pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "Does this mean it's permanent?" he asked. I didn't know, but for the first time, I realized I didn't want to go back. Months passed. Lily took her first steps. Daniel moved in. And then on a random Tuesday while making breakfast, I felt it, a familiar wave of nausea. The test was positive. This time, there was no panic. Just Daniel's teary laughter, Lily babbling "baby," like it was a game, and me pressing a hand to my stomach, marveling at how far I'd come. Magic had changed my body, but love had changed me. And that, I realized, was the real transformation. The second pregnancy was different in every way. The first time, I had been terrified, disoriented, drowning in the unreality of it all. This time, I knew what to expect. The swollen ankles, the midnight cravings, the way my body seemed to bloom in ways that still startled me when I caught my reflection. Daniel doted on me shamelessly, rubbing my aching feet after work and whispering against my belly in a way that made me melt. Even Lily seemed to understand something sacred was happening, pressing her tiny hands against my growing stomach with solemn curiosity. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't done with me yet. One evening, while digging through an old box for baby clothes, I found a note tucked beneath the yellowing onesies, one I'd never seen before. The handwriting was elegant, looping, unmistakably the same as the witches from my vision. "Magic leaves marks," it read. "Your first daughter carries it in her bones. The second will see the threads." I dropped the paper like it had burned me. Daniel found me shaking on the nursery floor, the note clutched in my hand. He read it silently, then exhaled through his nose. "We'll figure it out," he said, with a steadiness I clung to. But his grip on my shoulder was too tight. Lily had always been perceptive. She stared at shadows too long, giggled at empty corners. I'd chalked it up to a child's imagination. But then, the week before my due date, I caught her whispering to her stuffed bear, except the words weren't babble. They were names. Old ones. The kind that shouldn't exist in a toddler's vocabulary. The night I went into labor, the power went out. Not just in our apartment, the entire block. Daniel fumbled for candles, his phone flashlight casting jagged shadows. And Lily, wide awake despite the hour, pointed at the dark and said, "Clear as anything, the lady's here." Then the pain ripped through me, and I couldn't think about anything else. Sophie was born during the quietest hour of the night, her first cry sending the hospital lights flickering back to life. She had her sister's nose, Daniel's stubborn chin, and eyes that seemed too knowing for a newborn. When the nurse handed her to me, Sophie didn't cry. She stared, unblinking, her tiny fingers curling around mine like she was testing me. At home, the strangeness grew. Lily adored her sister, but she'd tilt her head like she was listening to something only Sophie could say. Objects moved when no one touched them. A pacifier rolling across the floor, a mobile spinning without wind. Daniel joked we'd brought home a poltergeist, but his laughter was thin. Then, on Sophie's 6-month birthday, I found Lily's bear perched on the nursery shelf, impossible, since she'd been clutching it during her nap. When I lifted it, something rustled inside. A second note, impossibly fresh. The magic chose you for a reason, it said. They'll need a mother who understands. That night, I dreamed of the shop again. The witch wasn't alone this time. Two little girls, one dark-haired, one fair, stood beside her, their hands linked. Not Lily and Sophie, but close. So close it hurt. You thought your story was about change, the witch murmured. It's not. It's about preparation. I woke gasping, my milk letting down in a hot rush. Down the hall, Sophie was wailing. Not her usual hungry cry, but something sharper. Desperate. Daniel stirred sleepily as I lurched out of bed. But I already knew. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The years that followed were equal parts magic and mundane. Sophie grew into her strangeness. She spoke in full sentences before she could walk, often describing places she'd never been and people she'd never met. Lily, now 5, became her interpreter, translating her sister's cryptic murmurs with eerie accuracy. Daniel and I learned to accept the impossible as routine. Drawings that moved when no one was looking, lights that brightened when the girls laughed, storms that gathered when Sophie had nightmares. I often wondered about the witch's words. They'll need a mother who understands. Some nights, when the house was quiet, I'd trace the faint silvery marks on my hips, stretch marks that glimmered when moonlight hit them just right, and wonder if the magic had left other traces in me too. On Sophie's 4th birthday, the truth revealed itself. The girls had been playing in the backyard when a sharp cry sent me running outside. Lily stood frozen, her small hands covering her mouth. Sophie hovered 3 feet above the grass, her entire body glowing with golden light. The air smelled like ozone and lavender. "Put me down," Sophie wailed, kicking her legs. With a thump, she dropped into the grass. The light vanished. That evening, as I tucked them into bed, Lily whispered, "We're not like other kids, are we?" I smoothed her hair and told her the truth. "No, sweetheart, you're so much more." Daniel and I sat up all night, talking in hushed voices. We'd known this day would come, but facing it was different. "They need training," he said finally. "Or protection. Or hell, I don't know. A magic babysitter." The next morning, a business card appeared on our kitchen table, thick parchment with embossed lettering, Madame Lavinia's Academy for Exceptional Youth. An address glowed faintly beneath it. We never discussed whether to go. We simply packed the car. The academy wasn't a school so much as a sprawling estate hidden between 2 misty mountains. Madame Lavinia, the same witch from my visions, greeted us at the iron gates. Up close, her agelessness was unsettling. She could have been 30 or 300. "Took you long enough," she said, but her smile was warm. Lily clutched my hand. Sophie, unusually quiet, stared at the woman with something like recognition. Daniel cleared his throat. "Will they be safe here?" Madame Lavinia's gaze flicked to my stomach, though I hadn't been pregnant in years, then to the shimmering marks on my wrists even I hadn't noticed until now. "Safer than out there," she said. "The world isn't kind to magic it doesn't understand." I thought of my own transformation, how terrified I'd been. My daughters would never have to face that fear alone. We visited every weekend at first, then every month as the girls grew more independent. Lily excelled at spell work, her hands steady as she wove light into tangible shapes. Sophie could manipulate energy itself, her laughter sending ripples through the academy's enchanted mirrors. On their 18th birthday, I found a note in my old maternity jeans. "The dress didn't change you, it woke you up. Now wake them up too." That night, I dreamt of 1,000 doors opening. When I woke, my scars were glowing. Daniel kissed each one. "Guess we're not done with magic yet," he murmured. Outside, the wind carried the sound of my daughter's laughter. Somewhere beyond the horizon, another woman was slipping on a silky dress for the first time, her transformation just beginning. And this time, she wouldn't have to do it alone. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.